Vijay Sharma walked through the busy streets of Mumbai, his expensive suit and confident stride marking him as someone important. At 42, he had achieved what many only dream of. He was the CEO of Tech Vision, one of India's fastest-growing technology companies. Today, he was visiting his childhood neighborhood for a rare meeting with old investors who still lived in this part of the city. The morning meeting had gone well. These elderly investors had supported him when nobody else would, and Vijay made sure they knew how much he valued their early faith in him. As he left the office building, he decided to take a short walk through the familiar streets where he had grown up before his driver picked him up. This neighborhood had changed so much. New shops replaced the old ones he remembered. Tall apartment buildings now stood where small houses once were. Yet some corners still felt familiar, bringing back memories of his childhood, running to school, playing cricket with friends, and the warm meals waiting for him at home. Feeling hungry, Vijay spotted a small restaurant that had been there since he was a child. Perfect, he thought. I wonder if they still make those delicious samosas I loved. The restaurant was simple but clean. As Vijay entered, the smell of spices filled the air. He found a quiet table in the corner and sat down. A young waiter came to take his order. "One plate of samosas and a cup of chai, please," Vijay said. As he waited, he checked his phone. Hundreds of emails needed his attention, but they could wait. For these few minutes, he wanted to enjoy this connection to his past. When the waiter brought his tea, Vijay noticed an elderly woman working in the kitchen through the open doorway. There was something familiar about her thin frame and the way she moved. He watched her more carefully, trying to place where he had seen her before. Then it hit him. "No, it can't be," he whispered to himself. He stood up and walked closer to the kitchen entrance. The woman must have been at least 85 years old, her hands shaking slightly as she rolled out dough. Her white hair was tied back in a neat bun, and despite her age, she worked with careful precision. "Meera auntie?" Vijay called out, using the name he had always called her. The old woman looked up, squinting through her glasses. For a moment, she seemed confused. Then her eyes widened with recognition. "Vijay, little Vijay?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. It was her, Meera Pratap, the woman who had raised him from when he was just 3 years old until he turned 15. His working parents had hired her as his nanny, but she had been much more than that. She had been his teacher, his friend, his second mother. "What are you doing here, auntie?" Vijay asked, stepping into the kitchen despite the curious looks from the staff. "I work here, beta. 4 hours every day," she said with a small smile. "My son owns this place." Vijay couldn't believe what he was seeing. Meera auntie had cared for him with such love and patience during his childhood. She had taught him values that still guided him today. And now, at her advanced age, she was still working in a hot kitchen. As they looked at each other, years of memories flashed through Vijay's mind. He remembered her stories, her gentle hands cleaning his scratched knees, her encouraging words when he struggled with schoolwork. "We need to talk," Vijay said firmly, emotions building in his chest. "Please, can you take a break?" Little did either of them know that this chance meeting would change both their lives forever. Meera auntie wiped her hands on her apron and nodded to her son who was managing the restaurant. "Just a short break," she told him. Her son looked curiously at Vijay, but didn't object. She led Vijay to a small table in the corner of the restaurant, her steps slow but steady. As they sat down, Vijay noticed how thin her wrists were, how the years had bent her one straight back. Yet her eyes still held the same kindness he remembered from childhood. "Look at you," she said, her voice filled with pride. "So big, so successful now. I see your face sometimes in newspapers." Vijay smiled but couldn't hide his concern. "Auntie, why are you still working? At your age, you should be resting, enjoying life." Mira's face showed a quick flash of sadness before she covered it with a smile. "What else would I do all day? Sitting alone is no good. Work keeps me strong." But Vijay knew there was more to the story. He had learned to read people during his business career, and he could tell when someone was hiding something. "Please, auntie, tell me the truth," he said gently. Mira sighed deeply. She looked down at her worn hands, then back at Vijay. "After your family moved away, I worked for many other families, but I never saved enough money. Who thinks about old age when they are young?" She paused, gathering her thoughts. My husband died 15 years ago. The small pension he left isn't enough. My son runs this restaurant, but business is not always good. He has his own children to support. Their education costs so much these days. Vijay felt a sharp pain in his chest. This woman had given him so much love and care, and now she couldn't even rest in her old age. You never tried to contact my family? He asked. Mira shook her head. Your parents moved to America, and you were busy building your life. Why would I disturb you? I was just your nanny. Never just a nanny, Vijay said firmly. You were family. As they talked, memories flooded back. Mira told him how she had followed his success from afar, collecting newspaper clippings about his company. She had watched him rise to fame with the same pride a mother would feel. Remember how you always wanted to build things? She asked with a gentle laugh. You would take apart your toys and try to make them better. I always knew you would become someone special. Vijay remembered how she had encouraged his curiosity when others found it annoying. How she had taught him to be kind to everyone, regardless of their position in life. These lessons had shaped who he was today. My grandson wants to study computer science, Mira said, her eyes lighting up. He reminds me of you, so smart, always asking questions. Vijay listened carefully. He learned that Mira had 3 grandchildren, all bright students with big dreams. Her son worked hard but struggled to provide the education they deserved. As their conversation continued, a plan began forming in Vijay's mind. He couldn't change the past, the years they had lost touch, but he could certainly change the future. Auntie, I have an idea, he said, leaning forward. But first, I want to meet your family. All of them. Mira looked surprised. But why? You are such a busy man. Vijay took her hand gently. Because some debts can never be repaid, but it's never too late to try. The next evening, Vijay's sleek black car pulled up in front of a modest apartment building in an old part of the city. He had cancelled 3 important meetings to be here, something his assistant couldn't believe. But for Vijay, nothing felt more important than this. He climbed the narrow stairs to the 3rd floor, following the address Mira had given him. Outside apartment 302, he paused to straighten his casual shirt. He had deliberately dressed down today, wearing simple jeans and a button-up shirt rather than his usual designer suits. When he knocked, the door opened quickly. Mira stood there with a wide smile, dressed in her best sari. Behind her, Vijay could see curious faces looking his way. Welcome, Beta, she said warmly. Come in, come in. The apartment was small but spotlessly clean. Family photos covered one wall, and the smell of cooking filled the air. Mira led him to the living room where her family waited. This is my son, Rajesh, she said, introducing a man in his 50s who stood up respectfully. He owns the restaurant, and this is his wife, Priya. Rajesh stepped forward to shake Vijay's hand. We've heard so much about you since yesterday. Mother talked about nothing else. Vijay smiled. Your mother was like a second parent to me. I owe her so much. 3 young people sat on the sofa, watching him with wide eyes. Mira introduced them proudly. These are my grandchildren. Aniket is 22, studying to be a teacher. Rohan is 19. He wants to study computers like you. And Divya is 16, top of her class in science. Each of the grandchildren greeted him politely, though Vijay could see the mixture of curiosity and nervousness in their eyes. To them, he was a famous CEO, someone they had only read about. As they sat down for dinner, the initial awkwardness slowly faded. Vijay asked questions about each family member, listening carefully to their answers. He learned that Anita was working part-time to help pay for her education. Rowan had been accepted to a good engineering college, but was considering a cheaper option instead. Divya dreamed of becoming a doctor. The food is delicious, Vijay said, enjoying the simple home-cooked meal more than any fancy restaurant dinner he'd had recently. Mother insisted on cooking everything herself, Priya explained. She's been preparing since morning. During dinner, Vijay observed the family dynamics. Despite their financial struggles, there was obvious love and respect among them. Rajesh clearly worked hard for his family. When he mentioned recent challenges at the restaurant, Vijay noticed how everyone grew quiet, concern visible on their faces. Business has been difficult since the new shopping mall opened nearby, Rajesh explained. Many customers go to the food court there now. After dinner, while the younger family members cleared the table, Vijay sat with Mira and Rajesh in the small living room. I want to help your family, Vijay said directly. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because Mira auntie invested in me when I was young. She gave me values that helped make me successful. Rajesh looked uncomfortable. Sir, we don't expect anything. Mother wanted you to visit, that's all. I understand, Vijay replied. But please hear me out. This isn't charity. I believe in investing in potential. He turned to Mira. Auntie, you shouldn't be working at your age. You deserve to rest, to enjoy your grandchildren. Then to Rajesh. And your children deserve every opportunity to pursue their dreams. Mira's eyes filled with tears. Beta, just your visit was enough. Vijay shook his head. No, it's not enough. Not for what you gave me. He took a deep breath. I have a proposal for your family, but I want you to consider it carefully before answering. The room grew quiet as Vijay began to explain his idea, one that would change all their lives forever. Vijay leaned forward, his hands clasped together as everyone in the small living room listened intently. Even the grandchildren had returned and were sitting quietly on the floor, their eyes fixed on him. First, Vijay began, I want to create a retirement fund for Mira auntie. She will receive a monthly payment that's more than enough to live comfortably without working another day. Mira began to protest, but Vijay gently raised his hand. Please, auntie, this is something I want to do. You cared for me when I couldn't care for myself. Now it's my turn. Rajesh shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sir, that's very generous, but... I'm not finished, Vijay continued with a smile. About your restaurant, Rajesh. I've been thinking about it since yesterday. The problem isn't your food. It was delicious. The problem is location and marketing. Vijay pulled out his tablet and opened a document he had prepared. I have a business proposal. I want to invest in your restaurant, help you open a second location in the new shopping mall that's taking your customers. We'll keep the original restaurant too. It has history and charm. Rajesh's eyes widened. But sir, that would cost. I'm not giving you money, Vijay clarified. I'm investing in your business. I believe in it. You'll still own and run everything, but you'll have the capital you need to grow. My company's marketing team will help rebrand and promote both locations. He smiled. Think of me as a silent partner who happens to love your samosas. The room was quiet for a moment as Rajesh and Priya exchanged stunned looks. And for the children, Vijay continued, turning to the three young faces watching him. Education is everything. I know this firsthand. He looked at Rowan first. You want to study computer science? I'll cover your full tuition at the best engineering school you could get into. No loans, no part-time jobs taking away from your studies. Just focus on learning. Rowan's mouth fell open. Sir, thank you. Vijay turned to Anita. The same for your teaching degree. And when you graduate, my foundation has connections with schools across the country. We can help place you wherever you want to work. Finally, he looked at Divya. And medical school is expensive. Very expensive. But when the time comes, if that's still your dream, consider it taken care of. The room erupted in emotion. Divya burst into tears while Anita hugged her. Rowan sat frozen, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Priya pressed her hands to her mouth, eyes shining with tears. Mira slowly stood up, her thin frame trembling slightly. Vijay, beta, this is too much. We cannot accept. Auntie, Vijay said, standing to take her hands in his. Do you remember what you used to tell me when I would say something was too difficult? Mira smiled through her tears. I would say, nothing is too difficult if you break it into small steps. Exactly, Vijay nodded. You taught me that. You taught me to be persistent, to work hard, to believe in myself. Those lessons made me who I am today. He looked around at the family. I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because talent and hard work should be rewarded. Because family, even family we choose, matters more than anything. Rajesh stood up, visibly moved. I don't know what to say, sir. Say you'll think about it, Vijay replied. Talk it over as a family. This is just the outline. Tomorrow, I'll send proper details for each part of the proposal. As Vijay prepared to leave, Mira walked him to the door. She reached up and placed her hand on his cheek, just as she used to do when he was a little boy. You were always a good child, she said softly. You become an even better man. Vijay smiled, feeling a weight lifting from his heart that he hadn't even known was there. I had a good teacher, Auntie. The best. 3 days had passed since Vijay's proposal to Mira's family. He sat in his large office on the 40th floor of the Tech Vision building, reviewing quarterly reports, but his mind kept drifting to the family in the small apartment. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Rajesh. Can we meet today? At our home, not the restaurant. Vijay immediately responded yes and rescheduled his evening appointments. By 6 o'clock, he was climbing those narrow stairs again, curious about what the family had decided. When he entered the apartment, the atmosphere felt different. Mira greeted him warmly, but Rajesh seemed tense. The grandchildren were nowhere to be seen. Please, sit down, Rajesh said, gesturing to the sofa. Priya brought tea and then sat beside her husband, her expression serious. We've been talking about your offer, Rajesh began. For 3 days, we talked about nothing else. Vijay nodded, waiting. The retirement fund for mother, we accept this with gratitude, Rajesh continued. She has worked hard her entire life. She deserves rest. Mira smiled softly from her chair, her eyes misty. But the restaurant investment and the children's education, Rajesh paused, struggling with his words. It's too much. We cannot. What my husband is trying to say, Priya interrupted gently, is that we worry about accepting so much help. What would we owe you? How would we ever repay such generosity? Pichai understood their concern immediately. Pride was at stake, independence, self-respect. You think I want something in return, he said softly. It wasn't a question. No one gives so much without expecting something back, Rajesh said, looking down at his hands. At least that has been my experience. Vijay sat back, considering his next words carefully. These were good people who valued hard work and earning their way. His approach needed to change. When I was 10 years old, Vijay began, I broke Mira Auntie's favorite teacup. It was a gift from her mother. Irreplaceable. Mira chuckled softly at the memory. I was terrified she would be angry, Vijay continued. But instead, she sat me down and said something I never forgot. She said, sometimes we cannot fix what we break. Sometimes all we can do is create something new to replace what was lost. He leaned forward. I can never repay what Mira Auntie gave me. The time, the care, the lessons. So instead, I'm trying to create something new. Turning to Rajesh, he said, what if we restructure the restaurant proposal? Make it a proper business loan with reasonable terms. You pay it back over time, with modest interest. Everything by contract, completely professional. Rajesh's expression changed. That feels different. And for the children's education, Vijay continued, what if they work for my foundation during school breaks? Real work, not just for show. They earn their scholarships with both their academic performance and their contribution. Priya nodded slowly. They would learn responsibility. Exactly, Vijay said. I'm not giving handouts. I'm investing in people I believe in. And I expect returns, not in money, but in seeing your family thrive. The tension in the room began to dissolve. Rajesh straightened his shoulders, looking more comfortable with this approach. There's something else you should know, Vijay added. I haven't told anyone at my company, but I'm launching a new educational initiative next month. We need bright students to test our learning platforms. Your grandchildren would actually be helping my business. This wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't exactly false either. Vijay had been considering such a program, and now he had the perfect motivation to fast-track it. Rajesh and Priya exchanged glances, a new understanding passing between them. We'll need to see the specific terms, Rajesh said finally, but I think we can work with this approach. Mira, who had been quietly listening, smiled proudly at both her son and her former charge. She knew exactly what Vijay was doing, finding a way to help that preserved everyone's dignity. Now, Vijay said, his tone lightening, where are those grandchildren? I have some ideas to discuss with them too. 1 month had passed since the family had accepted Vijay's revised proposal. The changes were already visible when Vijay visited their home on a warm Sunday afternoon. He was greeted by a more confident Rajesh, who proudly showed him the plans for the new restaurant location. The mall management was surprised when I mentioned I had backing from Tech Vision, Rajesh explained, spreading the architectural drawings on the dining table. They'd offered us a prime spot near the main entrance. Vijay smiled. He had only made one phone call to the mall owner, a business associate, but it had opened doors immediately. The location is perfect. When does construction begin? Next week, Rajesh said, his eyes bright with excitement. We've hired a designer to create a modern look. We're keeping our traditional recipes exactly the same. Preya entered with a tray of snacks. And we've already started training 4 new staff members for the expansion, she added. As they talked business, the front door opened. Mira walked in with a younger woman, both carrying shopping bags. Vijay noticed immediately how different Mira looked. Her posture was straighter, her movements more energetic. She wore a beautiful new sari and her hair was neatly styled. Vijay Beta, I didn't know you were coming today, she said, smiling widely. You remember my friend Lakshmi? We've been shopping. Vijay greeted both women warmly. It pleased him to see Mira enjoying her retirement, spending time with friends instead of working in a hot kitchen. And where are the young scholars? Vijay asked. Study group at the library, Preya replied. Even on Sunday. Since you introduced Rohan to that mentor from your company, he's become so serious about his studies. Vijay nodded with satisfaction. He had connected Rohan with a young software engineer from Tech Vision who had grown up in similar circumstances. The mentorship was already proving valuable. And Divya? He asked. She's volunteering at the community health clinic, Rajesh said proudly. The doctor there says she has natural talent. She'll make an excellent physician someday. As they continued talking, Vijay's phone buzzed with a message from Anita. Sir, I've finished the educational materials you asked me to review. Can I send you my feedback tonight? He smiled. Anita had proven to be incredibly insightful in evaluating the learning materials for his new educational initiative. Her perspective as a teaching student was exactly what the development team needed. Your grandchildren are impressive, Vijay told Mira. They embraced these opportunities fully. Mira sat beside him, her eyes shining with pride. They just needed a chance to show their abilities. Like you did, all those years ago. After tea, Vijay and Rajesh took a walk to visit the original restaurant. Several customers greeted Rajesh by name, showing the loyal following the place had built over years. A new sign hung above the entrance, with updated branding that matched the designs for the mall location. We've already seen a 15% increase in customers since the new marketing began, Rajesh explained. The online ordering system your team helped us set up has brought in younger customers who never knew about us before. Vijay listened attentively, offering occasional advice but mostly letting Rajesh explain his plans. He was impressed by how quickly Rajesh had adapted to the new business model. You know, Rajesh said as they walked back, when you first made your offer, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Vijay asked. That we would become dependent, that we would lose our self-respect. Rajesh looked at Vijay directly, but that hasn't happened. Instead, I feel like we've been given tools to build something better ourselves. Vijay placed a hand on Rajesh's shoulder. That was always the intention. Your family has talent and drive. You just needed some resources to match that potential. As the sun began to set, Vijay prepared to leave. He had an early flight to Singapore the next morning for an important meeting. But despite his busy schedule, these visits had become a priority. Will you come to the grand opening of the new restaurant next month? Rajesh asked. I wouldn't miss it for anything, Vijay promised. And he meant it. 6 months had passed, and the new restaurant in the mall had become a surprising success. Its blend of traditional recipes with modern presentation attracted both older customers who loved authentic food and younger people looking for trendy dining experiences. The original location was also thriving, maintaining its loyal customer base. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Vijay was in a meeting with international investors when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Rajesh had called 3 times in the last hour. Excusing himself, Vijay stepped out to return the call. Rajesh answered immediately, his voice tense. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have a serious problem. Mira Auntie is in the hospital. Vijay felt his heart drop. What happened? Is she okay? She fell at home this morning. The doctors say she broke her hip. They're preparing her for surgery right now. Which hospital? I'm on my way, Vijay said, already signaling to his assistant to reschedule his meetings. 30 minutes later, Vijay rushed into the hospital waiting room where he found the entire family. Priya was comforting a crying Divya while Anita paced nervously. Rowan stood by the window, his face tight with worry. Rajesh looked up when Vijay entered, relief visible in his tired eyes. "How is she?" Vijay asked. "Still in surgery," Rajesh replied. "The doctor said it's common for elderly people, but recovery will be difficult. She'll need special care for months." Vijay nodded, understanding the implications. "Don't worry about the costs. I'll handle everything." "It's not just the money," Rajesh said quietly, leading Vijay to a corner where they could speak privately. "Mother will need constant care. Priya can't do it alone with her teaching job. The restaurant needs me. The children have their studies." Vijay saw the fear in Rajesh's eyes, the fear of failing his mother when she needed him most. "We'll figure this out together," Vijay assured him. 3 hours later, the surgeon finally appeared with news. The surgery had been successful, but Mira's recovery would be complicated by her age and a previously undiagnosed heart condition. "She'll need specialized rehabilitation and monitoring," the doctor explained. "The first few weeks are critical." After the doctor left, Vijay stepped away to make several phone calls. When he returned, he had a solution. "I've arranged for the best care possible," he told the family. "There's a private rehabilitation center near your home. They have 24-hour medical staff and specialize in elderly patients." Rajesh shook his head. "Mother would hate that. She's always been independent. Being away from family would break her spirit." Vijay considered this. "What if we bring the care to her? We could modify your apartment, hire private nurses to work in shifts, and bring in all the equipment she needs." The family exchanged glances, considering this option. "But our apartment is small," Priya said hesitantly. "Where would we put everything? The nurses would have no space to work." Vijay had anticipated this problem. "I own a building not far from your home. There's a ground floor apartment. No stairs, wide doorways, perfect for someone with mobility issues. It's being renovated now, but I can have it ready within days." The family looked stunned at this suggestion. "It would just be temporary," Vijay added quickly, "until she's back on her feet. Then you can all decide what works best long-term." Rajesh looked conflicted. "This is too much, Vijay. First the business, then the children's education, now this." "Rajesh," Vijay said firmly, "when your mother took care of me, she never once said this is too much. She did whatever was needed, without hesitation." The emotion in Vijay's voice silenced everyone. They understood that this wasn't about charity or obligation. It was about family, the kind that goes beyond blood. Later that evening, when Mira woke briefly after surgery, Vijay was there with Rajesh. Her eyes were cloudy with medication, but she recognized them both. "My two sons," she whispered weakly, reaching for their hands. Neither man corrected her. "Everything will be okay, Auntie," Vijay promised. "We're all here for you." For the first time since he had reconnected with Mira, Vijay realized that he wasn't just helping her family, they were helping heal something in him that had been broken for a long time. 1 year had passed since Mira's surgery. On a bright Sunday morning, a celebration was underway in the garden of a beautiful ground-floor apartment. Colorful decorations hung from trees, and tables were arranged with delicious food from both restaurant locations. At the center of everything sat Mira in a comfortable chair, looking healthier than she had in years. Her recovery had been slow but steady. Though she now walked with a cane, her spirit remained unbroken. Around her gathered 4 generations of family, her own, and the one she had helped raise. Speech, called Anita, now a certified teacher working at a school supported by Vijay's foundation. Vijay stepped forward, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention. He was dressed casually today, no trace of the powerful CEO visible except in his confident stance. 1 year ago, he began, we faced a challenge that seemed overwhelming. But today, we're not just celebrating Mira Auntie's recovery. We're celebrating something much bigger, the power of connections that span time and circumstances. He looked around at the gathered faces. Rajesh and Priya stood proudly near their children. Rowan, now in his 2nd year of computer engineering, had brought his girlfriend to meet the family. Divya was thriving in her pre-medical studies while balancing volunteer work at the same clinic where she had started. The restaurants are doing better than we ever imagined, Vijay continued. The scholarship program for bright students from underprivileged backgrounds, inspired by this family, has already helped 50 young people pursue their dreams. He turned to Meera, and most importantly, our beloved auntie is healthy and happy. What Vijay didn't mention was that the temporary housing arrangement had become permanent. The entire family had moved into the spacious ground floor apartment, which Vijay had quietly transferred to Meera's name 6 months ago. The upper floor had been converted into student housing for scholarship recipients who needed a place to stay while studying in the city. None of this would have happened if I hadn't walked into that restaurant last year, Vijay said. Some people might call it coincidence. I call it destiny. After the speeches and lunch, as most guests mingled in small groups, Meera motioned for Vijay to sit beside her. I have something for you, she said, handing him a small, carefully wrapped package. Curious, Vijay unwrapped it to find an old teacup, meticulously restored but with visible lines where it had been broken and repaired. This is. Vijay's voice trailed off in amazement. The cup you broke when you were 10, Meera confirmed with a smile. I kept all the pieces. After my surgery, when I was starting rehabilitation, fixing things with my hands was good therapy. The nurse helped me glue it back together. Vijay stared at the cup, emotions overwhelming him. I thought it was lost forever. You told me it couldn't be replaced. I was wrong, Meera said softly. Sometimes broken things can be mended if we care enough to try. Vijay understood the deeper meaning behind her words. His connection with Meera had been broken for many years, but they had found a way to rebuild it, creating something even stronger than before. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Vijay stood quietly observing the family. Rajesh was discussing business with a potential investor Vijay had introduced him to. The 3 grandchildren were showing younger scholarship students how to use new educational software on their tablets. Priya and Meera sat together, watching everyone with contentment. Vijay's phone buzzed with messages from work, urgent matters requiring his attention, but for once, he switched it off without checking. These moments were too precious to interrupt. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Vijay realized something profound. In trying to repay his debt to Meera, he had gained something priceless, a reminder of what success truly meant. Not the wealth or power he had accumulated, but the ability to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. Meera caught his eye from across the garden and smiled knowingly, as if reading his thoughts. Some lessons, once taught with love, never fade. They simply wait for the right moment to be remembered.